Good morning, Temple Kolemeth. This week's portion, Ki Tavo, is the focus of our bootcamp this morning. And in the portion, we read something so powerful. We read about the ceremony of the first fruits. And the first fruits called the Bikurim, where in the land of Israel, all over Israel, where everyone was living, there was a time of year that the harvest would come and they would gather up their first fruits. And in 24 regional centers, as the Mishnah teaches, they would sleep overnight. And the next morning, they would all travel into Jerusalem, into that holy place. And what they would do when they would get there, those who were guarding the place, who were at the entrance, they would announce where so-and-so was from, and they would take all of their first fruits and they would offer it to the temple. And then they would offer a phrase that we read on Passover, that my father was a wandering Aramean, and God eventually freed the Israelites with an outstretched arm, with a mighty hand to give them freedom. And the Bikurim were about two things, two really important things. One was gratitude, is that we give the first of what we have to God in gratitude, in love, saying, guess what? We were slaves before and now we're free, and look at the success that we've achieved. It grounds us in the foundation of who we are. And back then we would offer it at the temple. Today it's a question of how do we offer our first fruits? What we earn, our lives, because we're not agricultural anymore. But how do we then offer the first fruits of our produce to give thanks? That's the first question to think about. How do we give? And how do we thank, and how do we show gratitude for what we have in our lives now that we have our freedom? The second piece, which is really important, is that freedom piece. Is that how do we always remember that, yes, we were slaves in the land of Egypt. Life has not always been easy for the Jewish people. And the question that we ask is, how do we take care of that freedom that we have? Are we selfish or are we selfless? How do we give? How do we enjoy? How do we show that love that we have because we are free? So gratitude and freedom and love and living in the world. So today we ask ourselves, as we look at the first fruits, how are we offering the first of our fruits? How are we showing our gratitude? Before we partake ourselves in the joy and the luxuries that we have, how do we show our gratitude for the first fruits to God for giving us what we have? That is the question that we look at in our own lives, especially as we're approaching the High Holy Days. Thank God for our freedom. Thank God for what we have. Thank God for the food that we have on our table and the first fruits of our own harvest. The question to contemplate throughout the rest of Elul into the High Holidays.